In order to most accurately light a scene, it's going to be important that you know how to control just how far into the distance each of your light shines. That control comes with something called attenuation. Now, in an earlier video, I mentioned that by default, lights in 3ds Max are designed to basically shine on forever. The only thing that would stop their illumination would be if the shadow casting option was activated on that light, and then something in the scene got in that light's way. A better way to be able to reel in a light's distance is to instead apply attenuation. To demonstrate how it works, I'll start with a file named Attenuation Spot. You can find it in the Working Files folder. Looking on the left-hand side of the screen, you find a spotlight throwing its light toward a handful of objects. The perspective view shows that from an angle. Let's go ahead and render our perspective view so we can see how things look. We'll do that by going to the upper right-hand corner of the toolbar and clicking on Render Production. As of right now, all of the objects in our scene are being equally lit, irrespective of their distance away from the light source. Let's see if we can't instead have the light appear to decay or dissipate away as it travels farther into the distance. To do that, we'll close the render, then select the light in the left-hand viewport. We can then move into the Modify column, heading into a section called Intensity Color Attenuation. The attenuation control has two different settings, one called Near Attenuation, the other Far Attenuation. The Near Attenuation range controls the point at which our light will begin to shine, which doesn't have to necessarily be right at the light's origination point. The Far Attenuation controls just how far into the distance the light travels. Now, both settings are important, but I think we should first get a handle on controlling just how far down the road our light is shining. That's the Far Attenuation control. Let's turn that on by checking next to where it says Use. Now, we'll also have to activate our shaded view to using the actual light in our scene as to the way things are displayed. To do that, we'll head to the upper left-hand corner of our perspective view and click on Realistic. From the menu that opens, we'll then choose Lighting and Shadows, then Illuminate with Scene Lights. Okay, with that, things get pretty dark. With the perspective view still active, let's also turn on 3ds Max's Active Shade. For that, we'll head back to the upper left-hand corner, this time clicking on Perspective. When the options drop down, we'll choose Extended Viewports, then Active Shade. Now, the reason the rendering is so dark can be explained by looking at the spotlight on the left-hand side. The light blue ring located on the lower part of the view represents just how far the light is traveling now that we've activated Far Attenuation. So at this point, no light is actually being cast far enough to hit any of the objects in our scene. The darker blue ring, a little farther down, shows you the location of the light's Far Attenuation start range, which controls just how far away from the light stays at 100% before it starts to fade or decay away. What happens in between the two rings is the light goes from full strength to losing its light altogether. Again, no light being casted past that light blue ring. Why don't we now go ahead and adjust the ranges? Back on the right-hand side controls, we'll take the Far Attenuation in range to 350. Notice that in the left-hand viewport, the End Attenuation range has now extended its way into the objects. And in doing so, a little light is now hitting that area. Let's see how things would change if we took that in range to 500. Now the light continues to travel farther into our scene. Let's try an in range of 600. Back on the left side, you can now see how the in range extends just past the last object in the scene. Okay, let's also adjust the Far Attenuation start range. We'll take that from its default value of 80 up to 250. With the light now staying at full strength longer, more light is being cast into our attenuated area. Let's compare that to using a start range of 500. With the light continuing to stay at full strength further into the scene, you can see how that's brightened things up. Let's take the start value of the Far Attenuation back to 80. So you can adjust things back and forth until you get just the distribution of light that you're shooting for. Let's turn the Far Attenuation off by unchecking Use. Now you can also control at what point in the scene the light starts shining. That's where the Near Attenuation comes in. Let's see how that works. In the controls on the right, we'll turn on Use under Near Attenuation. Looking in the left side view, you'll notice the range indicators are pretty close to the actual light icon. So let's spread those out a little. For the Near Attenuation, we'll change the in range to 250 and the start value to 150. The Near Attenuation's start range, the dark blue ring, sets the point at which the light begins to shine. So anything behind the dark blue ring as you travel back toward the light will be dark. The end range, the lighter of the two blue rings, indicates where the light has picked up strength and is now running at full throttle. In between the two rings, the light feathers up to full strength, starting at a low intensity right after the dark blue ring, then picking up to 100% strength by the time it reaches the lighter blue ring. Let's make a few adjustments so we can see that effect. We'll set the end range on the Near Attenuation to 500. At this point, the light doesn't reach full strength until after the sixth row of objects. Let's see how things would change if we took the start range to 325. Now, the light doesn't begin to give off light until after the first two rows in the scene. That's easy to see by looking in the left-hand view. Remember, it's in between the two rings where the light is building up to 100% strength. Let's try this. We'll turn the far attenuation back on, and we'll see if we can't restrict our light to only illuminating a couple of middle rows. Let's take our Near Attenuation range to a start value of 300 and an end value of 360. And we'll set the far attenuation to using a start range of 440 and an end range of 475. So pretty neat how that can be controlled. I'll go ahead and save this up as Attenuation Spot Completed if you'd like to look it over. As far as adjusting attenuation, the same things can be done when working with OmniLights. To illustrate that, I'll use a file named Attenuation Omni. It too can be found in the Working Files folder. Let's select our light and we'll activate its far attenuation. The rings, especially the dark blue one, is a little tough to see with our charcoal viewport color, but let's talk them over. The dark blue inside ring again sets the point at which the light begins to decay away from 100%. The light blue outside ring is used to control just how far the light shines. So anything outside the light blue in range won't be lit. Let's see if that's the case. We'll activate the active shade for our perspective viewport. Let's adjust the in range on the far attenuation and we'll see how things change. We'll take that value from 200 down to 100. With the outside ring shrinking in size, we now have less of our seeing being lit. Let's extend the end far attenuation range to 300. Take a look at the difference. The outside ring has now expanded in our left-hand viewport, and in doing so, our far attenuation controls are now lighting more of the scene. Let's take the far attenuation start range to 25. This will cause the OmniLight to diminish from its full strength a little closer to the light itself. Let's try a start value of 150. Now the light is staying brighter longer from its origination point. Let's compare that to a start value of 250. Here the light is remaining at full strength even longer still. Like with the spotlight, there's also a near attenuation that can be controlled. Let's turn that on and we'll set the start range to 100. Now the light is going a little farther down the line before beginning to illuminate. Let's set the end value on the near attenuation to 250. With that, the Omni is now feathering a little bit before reaching its full strength. Again, it's just a matter of making adjustments until you get the look that you're aiming for. So that's attenuation. Being able to control both when a light begins to shine and just how far into the distance it actually goes. A very big setting. If you're serious about your lighting, make sure to use it in each and every one of your upcoming projects. I'll go ahead and save this out as Attenuation Omni Completed if you'd like to take a look.